Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, this evening we have with us Deputy City Manager Mike Faust, who's going to give a presentation on the vision and operational strategy for the North Peoria development efforts. Throughout the course of his presentation this evening, he's going to be joined by various staff members, including Planning Director Chris Hawkes, a consultant that's our former Water Director, Kate Powers, Deputy City Manager Kevin Burke, and Economic Development Director Maria Lothner. I think that's it. I don't know if there's anyone else. Did I cover everything?
I think so.
With that, I turn it over to Mike to begin our presentation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Darwin, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Darwin. Mayor, Council, it's a privilege to be here tonight. I love the title on the slide, The Project, because as we walk through this evening, I hope we demonstrate the significance and the magnitude of this. I enjoy coming and speaking to you at presentations. I've been preparing for this presentation since probably March 5th. And that'll come and make a little more sense in a little bit. But for 6 months, I've been preparing for it. For 6 months, I've been listening to the public comment. I've been taking notes after every single public speaker and every presentation. And until this morning, I was preparing a retort for almost everything I had heard, right? Because we're in the trenches every single day. But as I do every morning, I'm up at 5. Well, that's a lie. I'm usually up at 4, but I decided to get out of bed at 5. And I went through my morning devotional routine as I always do. And so as I was preparing what I wanted to say, I came across this verse that kind of caught me, and I thought it was appropriate for today. Let all bitterness, anger, and wrath, shouting and slander be removed from you, along with all malice, and be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving one another, just as God also forgave you in Christ. Despite what some believe, despite what many have said, the Council of Staff have never lost sight of what's in the best interest of the community. And I think as we tell this story tonight, that will become apparent. It will become very apparent. So I hope and pray as we walk through the full timeline tonight that this brings healing and not hate, that everyone sees the sacrifices that have been made to bring this into reality. The staff is going to work hard to present the full story tonight. And so we're going to break this presentation into 4 sections, maybe 5. First, we're going to give some acknowledgments because nobody will ever understand how much work this took. And I know the community has put a lot into it. They really have. We've seen civic engagement like we haven't seen before. But the amount of energy this staff have put in to fulfill the council's direction and agenda, it just can't be measured. So we're going to start with that. I'm going to go through an overview of kind of the timeline, the last 2.5 years that led us here. As Henry had said, we're going to be joined by a couple more folks. We're going to give a summary before you ever take a vote. We're going to give a summary of everything. We're going to talk about how we got here. We're going to talk about economic development. We're going to touch on the infrastructure, the $238 million that's being invested. We're going to touch on that. We're going to touch on yesterday's land auction, which was just a significant and tremendous day. We're going to talk about the Amcor deal, and then we're going to talk about 5 North. And after we've talked about that whole story, then we're going to get in and we're going to take 3 individual presentations, 1 on Amcor, 3 votes, 1 on Vistancia, 3 votes, 1 on Core 2 development dollars, 1 vote, and that way the council can make decisions on the matters that are brought forth because you vote on those matters, not the city manager. Okay? So before we get into that presentation, I do just want to acknowledge some people. And I'm going to do my best to call out a couple people, and I don't want to miss anything. And Mayor, I appreciate the defensive statements of the staff. These folks work their tails off. And so if it would be okay, I would love to see if we can get the staff to stand, those who've supported this project, if we could stand and recognize all city staff that are in the office now, or in the room now. Would you mind standing?
Please.
As I mentioned earlier, I could tell you a year's worth of stories of individual efforts and pain that these folks have gone through. Personal sacrifices, setting family time aside, Just countless. It just wouldn't do it justice. It just simply would not do it justice. But we are blessed. We by far have the greatest city staff in all of the valley. I don't get in other parts of the country, but I would argue I'll put them up against anybody. Anybody. These folks are fantastic. I got a couple other folks I really want to recognize. Our legal team, Michael Dines, Chris Klemenich, Jay Kramer from Fenimore Craig. We have exercised these folks exceptionally hard. So I read something yesterday that said the city is hastily rushing to bring matters to the city council tomorrow. As you well know, because we've spoken about it in the executive sessions where we do negotiate contracts. That's why state law has a provision for executive sessions. The amount of time, energy, and effort these people have put in is immense. I called those lawyers at 3:40 on Friday afternoon and put them on a conference call at 3:45. Right, on a Friday. They don't work on Fridays. That's the type of energy and effort we've got out of them. I really want to thank the Arizona State Land Department. 75% of the developable land that's left in our city is state trust land. These people have walked alongside of us and they see the opportunities. They see what Peoria can be and they've walked alongside of us. And as we walk through this timeline today, people will understand. We did in 9 months, which private developers do in 4 or 5 years. So when people say we rushed to do something, we worked as hard as we could. But what private developers tell us takes 4 or 5 years, we did in 9 months because it's what the community was looking for. It's what you asked us to do. And when it comes to, people will know you heard them and you acted upon those things. I want to thank Amcor. Amcor has taken a ton of hits. They've been accused of a lot of things. They've been accused of polluting our city and they don't even have a facility within it. They are a fantastic partner. We have spent hundreds of hours with them. We have gone to their facilities in Korea. We have spent time with them. They care about us. They care about building here. They care about being a meaningful partner with us. I personally want to thank David McCann. David has been a fantastic partner. He is a tough negotiator. When we go through and talk through the DA amendment that you'll vote on tonight, Dave fought feverishly for his side. We fought feverishly for ours. And you'll see, we didn't give away anything. We'll talk about that when we get there. They backstopped us and we have protections in our contract. We negotiated hard and we ended up in a good position. And part of that is we have a great relationship with Amcor and we've driven hard for 2 years to get there. I want to thank the Vistancia development team and Land Resources, amazing partners. We're committed to working alongside them to see their vision through of developing Vistancia in a way that I think the community will be very happy with. And we'll talk about that later tonight. I want to thank Henry. Henry takes a lot of hits, but I'll tell you what, you're a great boss. When you called me on January, I'll never forget, we had lunch on January 30th, your first day. You asked me if I'd come. I'm a Peoria resident for the last 11 years. It's the only city I've lived in Phoenix. I do not want to live anywhere else, and you gave me the opportunity to come serve here. That means a lot to me, right? This is a God story for me, right? I had intended to leave government. You gave me the opportunity to come serve, and I'm grateful for that. I want to thank the mayor and council. You guys have been great. Your strength, your commitment, your unwavering support, and as we tell this story tonight, and people will realize how much you stood behind what they were saying, but you did the right thing for the city to make sure we won this public auction, right? You guys have been strong, you've been supportive, you've absolutely done the right thing. And I want to thank the community, right? And I don't mean that in any cynical or facetious way. At the end of the day, we've seen great, passionate civic engagement. We really have. And I'm glad people came out. And we'll talk about some of the misnomers and things that are out there. I'm going to try not to highlight them tonight. I wish they weren't. I wish Facebook didn't exist, right, because the misinformation that flows through it. But at the end of the day, it's clear. We've got people who love Peoria. We love Peoria too, right? And we're committed to making it a great place. I live here. I'm not going to go pollute the environment. We're going to do the right thing, and I hope that our actions clearly demonstrate that we're committed to doing the right thing, and we'll see it through to completion. So as we get rolling into this, I've said this a couple different ways, but tonight, for me, it's a God story. We're going to tell a God story tonight. And that's one of those things when you get done with it and you look back and you clearly realize that each little step was impossible on its own. And each step was impossible, but when you run through them connected, it's even more impossible. You know it's only through the hand of the one true God that we're able to do what we do. For those that don't want to hear my God story or tell me there's a separation of church and state, tonight might feel like the movie The Sixth Sense. If you remember The Sixth Sense when they rolled the credits at the end and they show you all the clues that you missed along the way because you were too emotional or didn't understand, right? The red doorknob or the table in front of the basement door. Remember the chair that was pulled out from the restaurant dinner table? The fact that the little kid said, "I see dead people," but nobody realized that Bruce Willis was dead. Tonight might feel a little bit like that as we walk through this and we tell the whole story and we see that the clues were there the whole way. But again, because we had to win a public auction, because we were negotiating contracts, we couldn't tell the whole story. Tonight we will. Tonight we will. So I'm going to start with a couple of things. So why are we here? And it's not just to listen to me tell a God story. We're here to talk about smart, holistic growth of the city. We're talking about planning and building the future. We're looking out 10 or 20 years, right? The end of the city is really going to be North Peoria Gateway and the Peoria Innovation Core. It's going to be the end. So you, this council, are laying groundwork for the growth of the city. And I'll throw up this quote. 90% of our workforce now drive out of the city to go to work. That's not a sustainable way to have a complete city. It's time to change the trajectory. That means we need true employment, right? We have a highly educated workforce and a commercial core that's uniquely situated right along the 303. You've heard these things before. This particular quote is actually from Kathy Carlott in 2015, right? These issues aren't new. They're not new, right? Peoria's been out on the edges of the valley, and our folks have been, I know this personally. I worked for the state for 7.5 years. I drove 65 minutes each way, there and back, every day. 5 days a week, every day. It sucked. I drive 18.5 minutes now. And because I know how uptight the cops are, I only do 6 miles over the speed limit now because I don't want to get pulled over. So the vision remains constant over the past decade. It remains unchanged. For the longest time, the Vistancia Commercial Core was the only large-scale property zoned to promote employment. Now, what a lot of folks don't want to recognize, so it was zoned that way, and it has been for 20 years. And it started at 500 acres of land. But what a lot of folks don't realize is chunks of it have been carved off to turn into residential. So you get on the north side of Lone Mountain, that was originally part of the 500 acres, it's been turned into residential. So slowly, the only available land we had was being carved away. Now you got 320 acres left, but some of it's multifamily, some of it's medium density residential, leaving only 160 acres. And if we know that we want to drive increasing density and employment, you got to have those two to get to commercial and retail. You do not get good commercial businesses or retail restaurants if you don't have density of housing and you have daytime jobs because they need to rotate tables more than one time a day. Good restaurants have one rush, great restaurants have two, and it means you have both employment and rooftops. Another key takeaway is without these additional developments, tax generation is insufficient to maintain the community's expectations. You can't maintain the parks. You cannot maintain law enforcement because as the city grows, if you do not have that employment base and that density, bedroom communities inevitably raise taxes. Right? They do. It's the only way to maintain services. So you've seen a similar table of this. Last time we showed it to you, it was FY23 though. So when we showed you the FY23 number, the city of Peoria was dead last. We were at 58,000 per resident. So we've made some progress with our economic development efforts. We've moved up to, it's 62,000, but we're way off the beat from where we want to be. We need to be up in that $80,000 range to be generating the tax revenue in order to sustain the services we have. But let me give you one key takeaway from this slide. The two that are below us, you know what they just did? They just increased their tax rate. They increased their tax rate to maintain the services they had. You have to drive economic development in order to prevent from raising that tax rate. And we saw it. Surprise and Gilbert just had to do it. So our goal is not to do that. So as I said earlier, we have the same vision. We want to drive an employment base and economic development. But we have a new team and a new operational strategy. Henry has assembled a fantastic team. Absolutely fantastic. We have a new operational strategy. And I want to drive home, and I wasn't here when the mayor first got here on his first day, but I've heard this story many times. Everybody he first met, he talked about the state land deal over and over again, right? It was the mayor's approach since day one. And the approach was to be a true partner with ASLD to open development opportunities, not to go to state land and say, we want to do it our way. And I'll be transparent with you because I talked to them about this yesterday. One of the reasons why they wouldn't do business with Peoria is because they used to walk in with a plan and say, here's what I want you to do. Instead of saying, listen, let's open up this land. Let's do so because we're going to generate economic development for the city. We're going to return money to K-12 education. But because they came with a one-sided relationship, state land could never get behind it. So from day one, and we'll tell this story, we walked into state land and we said, we're going to do X. We're going to commit to develop your property to the city and the state's benefit. And the mayor said it in the earlier session. We have a one-of-a-kind IGA that every piece of infrastructure we put in the ground, we will be reimbursed for. So when people make the assumption that we're out on a limb, we have protections there. We put it in the ground, we collect interest. We get paid back when the land sells, right? It's a net zero application, but we get the benefit of the tax dollars generated from the businesses that land in there, right? It also allows us to play a leadership role as the city builds out. We have the best planning team in the state. I'll take that any day of the week. I'll walk next to Chris Hawkes and his team any day because I trust what they'll deliver, and they get to lead the zoning effort for this land. That doesn't happen. Other cities don't do that. We're taking a leadership role, and through that, right, so in that, bringing that land, we knew that we needed a development catalyst project to launch North Peoria. And this is where the air park study came in. We'll touch on that in a little bit. We ended up pivoting on that. We pivoted on it because the cost was too high and it was going to take too long. And we're too impatient for the kind of that. We can't sustain at a, going from 58,000 per citizen to 62. We need to jump a couple rungs on the ladder very quick, and the air park wasn't going to get there. And I'll walk you through how that decision was made. And as this land comes to market, it allows us to recruit key employers. It allows us to recruit healthcare and retailers that improve the amenities and the options that the community is asking for, right? So I'm going to walk you through a timeline here after I take a drink. Got 2 slides of timelines, and then I'm going to be joined by 4 others as we walk through this summary. But before I get into this timeline, I want to speak to the concerns about transparency. I struggle when staff are accused of not being transparent. I got to tell you, there's like 2 things in life that drive me nuts. You call me a bureaucrat or tell me I'm not transparent. You spend 3 minutes with me, and you'll know I'm pretty transparent. But I think it's important to know that we're transparent when it's appropriate to do so. And let me restate that, because we're always transparent. But sometimes the timeliness of it, especially when it comes to contract negotiations, or in this particular case, when it comes to the state land auction, we couldn't tell the whole story. If we invited competition, this whole thing blew up. So it was important to protect the strategy. You had to win the state land auction to pull this whole thing off. And as we walk through the whole timeline, it's going to make sense. So I've got some items on the calendar, up on the deal, but I also want to highlight some things as we go along the way. So bear with me. I'll give you a point to ask a question a little bit. We're going back 2.5 years. We're 21 minutes in. I only got 3 hours to go. So I want to highlight a couple things. June of 22, Amcor introduction. We've heard the mayor brought them in. I remember the one where Faust's wife is the CEO, right? Remember that one? Remember you had to ask me in public? That was so embarrassing to go home and tell my wife. My wife is a pastor and a volunteer coordinator at CCV. She's not the CFO of Amcor, I promise you. So Amcor was already engaged with the city before Mr. Beck joined. January, Beck swears in, and on a campaign promise, as he said, day 1, air park study begins. Start looking to build an air park, understanding because they thought we needed a catalyst. Well, shortly thereafter, we get into these Amcor discussions, because we went from some conversations that were going on post Super Bowl, they come in, now the conversations start getting real. And by May, we went over there the first week of May, start having the conversations, it's now real. Well, that's traversing through the summer. We're negotiating that thing. And I've told this story 37 times in the last couple days, because it's part of the God story that I'm experiencing personally. Mr. Jaquez and I walked in on August 30th, 2023. Now, if you check your calendar, the last Wednesday of August 2023 was August 30th. Chris and I had a 10 a.m. meeting on the last Wednesday of August. And on the last Wednesday of August in 2025, at 12 noon, we walked in and we bought a piece of land off of that strategy. 2 years and 2 hours to pull that off. Most people would tell you it takes 3 to 5 years to do that with state land. We pushed hard to get there. Well, as we now are working with the state on the state land strategy, our DA negotiations conclude with Amcor. So we wrap our negotiations about the November timeframe. We wanted to wait till after the first of the year. We had to get through all the final documentation. And we adopt the Amcor DA February 20th of 2024, right? That's the first big project. And honestly, people were shocked. People were shocked when Peoria landed Amcor, because nobody ever really thought of Peoria as a place to land a business like that. Well, at the same point, we're ending the airport feasibility, right? And so we're talking to the public about that, and we got these two things going on simultaneously. And until this very moment, I just forgot the accusation that was out there that we were using the airport to hide Amcor, or the Amcor. I forget which way the story goes, but at the end of the day, the staff were working really hard to advance two strategic initiatives that the council had. Bring employment, build an air park. There was no shell games going on. We were just working really hard simultaneously. Well, about the time that the feasibility ends in April, we start working on the Amcor design with them. And we worked all summer long, and it quickly grew, right? When we originally presented it, 50-foot buildings, 500,000 square foot, market demands are going up. TSMC's announcing we're going from 2 fabs to multiple fabs. They're now going to invest more. Market demands are going up. Amcor demands go up. And thus they say we need to grow our footprint. And we spent the whole summer helping problem solve how to fit them on that property. Simultaneous to that, because we're overachievers, we go to start to do a general plan amendment, right? So now we're working a general plan amendment at the same time we're trying to bring the North Peoria Gateway, because we hadn't brought any new state land to the market. So in October, I think it was October 17th, we finished the North Peoria Gateway zoning. It was an annexation and a zoning case. And finally, after 15 years of engaging with the state, we have a piece of land that's going to come to the market. And Chris is going to talk to you about it, because within 6 months, there's already 4 applications against it, and people are wanting to develop and invest in Peoria. What a great story. So we have the first big economic development project, and we have the first big state land deal, and we're just now starting to wrap 2024. But we weren't done in 2024 quite yet. And I know for some of you in the back, these words might be a little hard to read, so I'm going to get into it a little bit. When we roll into November of 24, I'll never forget this day. I could take you to the conference room we were in, and I could place every character in the room in the chair they were sitting in. And on the 18th of November, we sat down. It was a 4 p.m. meeting. I won't forget. Mayor sat to my left. Another city guy sat right across from me. Kevin was to my right. And the mayor looked down at us and he says, you know what? We're going to walk on the air park. We're walking from the air park. It's going to take too long. It's going to go too slow. We need to move faster. It's not the winning recipe. We're going to walk. So when people have said state land turned that off, Mayor Beck turned that off. Came in and said, we're not going to reach our goals. And we said, let's pivot. Let's pivot. He said, let's go there. We threw an idea, and then ultimately the council jumped on it, and I'll get more to that in a second. But about this same time, we were recognizing that Amcor was not fitting, right? Their scope and the demand was significant. So when we made a pivot on December 2nd, and we've said this multiple times, we went to the state and we put in an application to bring Core 2 to auction. December 2nd, we did that. Because I remember on December 17th, we came back to do the IGA, And in that meeting, when the council adopted the IGA, Councilmember Schaefer explicitly read that section. Signing this IGA gives us permission to go put in an application and go after the 834 acres that is Core 2. And that's when our story really started to change. Because the day after we submitted that application on 12/2, we walked in and had a conversation with Amcor. We're going to go buy a piece of land in Core 2, and if we're successful, will you come with us? And they said, our schedule drives everything. Our schedule drives everything. We knew that from the beginning. I mean, I remember Councilmember Bullock, first time you met with them, you were in your seat 6 weeks, and you went and met with them, and I think they told you that right from the jump. Our schedule drives everything. So from 12/2 on, we've been head down, full blast, trying to pull this off. Because we knew they were big, we knew they grew, we wanted them in our community. Because much like the positive nature that Intel has brought to Chandler, we wanted that in our community. We needed an anchor tenant. We needed the new largest employer in our city. And they were the right partner, but their demand had grown. We were going to go, we were ready to build, but ultimately we threw them a plan, and it was Plan B. That was the Plan B. So they still had Plan A Vistancia, they had Plan B. All this before the turn of the year. Now, we had made a couple of these key decisions before the first of the year, but we didn't come out and talk about the air park until January because we wanted to wait until the new council had rolled over, and really you're in the holiday season. So we come back, and in January, you remember January 8th, we had the public meeting at Liberty High School. That was a lot of fun. And then we had the air park meeting. First study session up, Tuesday the 14th, a couple of new council members. We announced that we're walking on the air park. But by that point, our efforts on Core 2 were already underway. A few short weeks later, as we continued to work with Amcor, on February 21st, about 10:15 in the morning, I got a phone call and they said, we want Plan B to be our Plan A. They said, if you go, we go. So we've come, and over that period of time, we've sat with the council countless times and have had conversations. And this council has stood firm, knowing the risk in this whole thing that most people won't understand and I'll probably get ridiculed for. We knew if the community, if the development community was aware Amcor was coming with us on the Core 2 auction, we were fearful that somebody would come outbid us and hold them hostage, and they'd leave. So we had to put our heads down. You folks had to put your heads down. So when I said at the beginning of this thing, I've been preparing for this night since March 5th, it's because since that point in time, you folks have heard your community and you've challenged the staff to do the hardest thing that could be done. Because before yesterday, hundreds of people have talked about how to pull this off. About 5 people have tried it, and one group, this group, pulled it off. And we've been heads down ever since. So from February 21st, when that decision got made, we have been busting our butt. We knew we were backstopped the whole way with the IGA, right? Because if we invest in the public infrastructure, we knew we were going to get reimbursed. So when people would come up to the podium and say, why are you taking risks to put in public infrastructure on a whim? It was never on a whim. You're backstopped by an IGA. You put the infrastructure in the ground, you draw interest on it until it sells. And then you get reimbursed by the people who buy the land. You were backstopped. So the list, I mean, Councilmember Finn, you've challenged us on the fiscal side of this thing every step of the way, and we were backstopped and we were in good shape. So you told us to march forward. So as we looked onto this thing, we knew where we were going. Councilmember Bullock jumped in. I'm really glad you engaged, you learned, and you went out communicating to the community, right? Trying to share information about what's going on. You've been a great partner along the way, and I appreciate that. You have represented your district well. You've challenged staff to answer questions. You've done a fantastic job of engaging with a group of folks who were upset, and you've done your best to try to bring them information. But you couldn't share the whole story because there was too much risk. Yet this group stood here, you took the hits, and you kept doing the right thing for the community. And I do feel bad if that upsets people. I really do. I mean, I brought my prayer journal as a reminder tonight of how much I prayed for you folks and how much I prayed for this community through this whole thing. but it's paid off. You've done something nobody else has ever done, and it's pretty darn cool. So ever since then, through April, like we started to get after the infrastructure. We designed the infrastructure. We're out there building infrastructure now, right? We knew we were going to do the land exchange. So Maria's going to get up here and tell you the outcome, because we're not letting some of these folks going home to tell you what part of that land, what is going on it. You'll hear tonight. Why? Because we've been working full blast since May to figure that thing out. Now, an important fact, we had the Plan A, the Vistancia site plan for Amcor, ready to go since May. We chose not to approve it out of respect for the community, because we knew if we approved it, we were just going to infuriate people more, and it was no longer Plan A. It was then the backup plan. So when folks said, hey, they're not approving the site plan because they're worried about getting sued, we weren't worried about getting sued. We stand very firmly. We have tested the zoning. We knew it could go. Whether it was liked or not, we're on good legal footing. It could have happened all day long, but we chose not to, because we knew that folks would file suit. We knew they'd lose, but we didn't want to do that. It was disrespectful. So we chose to hold. And I'm glad we did, because it would have been a ton of angst for no reason. Over the summer, we have renegotiated all of these deals. So tonight, because the city council is required to vote on development agreement amendments, you are going to vote on a development agreement. We have worked countless hours all summer long, all of June, all of July, all of August, negotiating these deals and getting set. And yesterday, we walked in and did something that no municipality had tried, right? As I tell people, we're stupid enough to say it out loud, and we're crazy enough to try it, and we tried it, and we won. And through your strength, through your support, we've been able to facilitate one of the coolest things. And tonight, we call it the project because it's the project. It's that big. When we ran this agenda, we looked at it and we said, Kevin said it best, that's a career's worth of work. And we're going to deliver it on one night. On one night. So I'm going to be joined by 5 colleagues right now. They're going to come up and walk us through the whole thing, to tell the whole story. As they come up, well, we'll hold for questions. We'll pause after that section and get in. I'm having way more fun than I thought I was going to have, so I appreciate you indulging me. I am joined tonight by Chris Jaquez, the Planning Community Development Director. He's going to touch on regional context. It's important. He's going to walk us through why this part of the city is so important and what's going on. Kate Powers, who tried to leave, but we clawed him back. Cape is our program manager. He's overseeing the Core 2 development. He's a private developer in his background before he became the Water Services Director. He's here helping walk us through. My partner in crime, Kevin, here is going to walk us through the Core 2 acquisition. Yesterday was a nerve-wracking day, but it was a successful nerve-wracking day. I'm going to touch on Amcor. We'll touch a little bit, just super high level, but we're going to come back to that in detail. And then we're going to talk about 5 North at Vistancia. Maria, our Economic Development Director, is going to touch on what we're planning to put there, right? And although we don't have all 56 acres cooked, we will walk through and we will share what we know, and I feel pretty confident that the community is going to dig what we have brought. Chris?
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I just want to say, Mr. Darwin and Mike, it's been an absolute privilege and honor to be part of this team. This is a very talented team, and I've been at the city a long time, and this has been a project that has offered a lot in terms of balance between healthy level of anxiety and a lot of excitement, because what we're doing is big stuff, and it's going to be impactful stuff, and it's been just a joy to be part of this team here. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to provide a lead-in to the public infrastructure and the Core 2 acquisition. I'm going to talk about the context of Peoria Innovation Core and how this is the right time, the right place for, we think, the kind of economic development that we're going to instigate in North Peoria. So as Mike mentioned in his remarks, there's actually very little land available to instigate the type of meaningful economic, base economic development that is desired. As he mentioned, this has been a top priority. Top priority for this council, top priority for prior councils for a long time, as far as I can remember. That has been the priority, because we all understood people were driving out of the community for jobs in other communities. And if you're going to have a fiscally sustainable community, You have to have opportunities for work here that cuts down on commute sheds, that provides support to our businesses, and it's a more healthy, sustainable way to have a city. So we understood that part of it. Now, when you look at North Peoria, you see a lot of vacant land. And as we mentioned, the reality is there's very little vacant land available because it's all state land. And so one of the things I'm going to direct your attention to on the screen here is a public lands map. I know you've seen this before. The lands in yellow, and those are lands that are north of State Route 74. That is BLM, Bureau of Land Management, right? They have a basically they have their own master plan and they have a recreational position, right? Those lands are not going to be developed. The lands in blue, that's Arizona State Trust land. And as you can see the Loop 303 cutting right through the middle of that area. All that land along that corridor is state trust land, right? The area in white in the upper left-hand portion, the donut in white, that is all the master plan communities of Estancia and Saddleback and Lake Pleasant Heights. They're all surrounded by Arizona State Trust land. So if we were going to instigate meaningful development, we knew that it was important that we had to collaborate with State Land Department. We had to work on efforts, plan, and a relationship that provided mutual benefit, not only for us, but also for the State Land Department. It is their land. And so one of the things I do want to mention about state trust land that's often misunderstood is it's not vacant, open, preserved land, right? A lot of times I hear that in the community, that it's just open land. The fact is, the State Land Department, they are the fiduciary for the state trust land. They manage 9 million acres statewide, and they have beneficiaries, right? And they operate by holding land until it maximizes its value, and they make money through the sale of land or the lease of land, and that land then goes to the underlying beneficiaries. There happens to be 13 beneficiaries, the largest of which is public schools, K through 12 education. They're 90% of the beneficiaries statewide. And it just happens to be that core to the land that we purchased yesterday is the underlying beneficiary is K through 12 education. That's one way we pay for education within the state. Now, so in that regard, we've heard from people that while the land can't be developed, they've heard from their realtor that it's open space, it's preserved land, and I'll just say that I'm sorry that people were misinformed or misdirected by their realtor or by people they were talking to, because state land again has a very different mission, right? State land, we look at state land, it's going to be auctioned someday. It's going to be sold or leased someday. It will develop. It is not open space. It is not preserved land, right? There might be open space as part of the development plan that's part of that land that's sold, but by itself, it is not open preserved land. They've got a very different mission than other lands. It's not public land. And so as we approached State Land Department, we understood that in establishing this relationship, it was very important that we get a comprehensive approach and a comprehensive guide to guiding growth. Because what we don't want to see is piecemeal development. We don't want to see the one-offs developments that you see, or developments that don't have one relationship to another, and it's kind of disjointed. It was important for us to approach these two very key, well-positioned areas and develop a master plan strategy, not only with infrastructure, but with land use, and so that they're to de-risk the property. So as we go forward, we understood what the property could contain and its benefit and its outcome. So as Mike mentioned, back in 2024, working with a general plan amendment, we adopted a state land special land use category. And really what that did was it said that it was a commitment to master plan these two key areas, one being the North Peoria Gateway, right, centered around Happy Valley and Lake Pleasant, or Happy Valley and the Loop 303, 1,600 acres. And the other one being the Big Giant, right, the Peoria Innovation Core, roughly 7,000 acres. And so we applied that designation to those two areas, knowing that we were going to be embarking on two master plan efforts to develop the zoning and to complete the entitlements for those. So we did complete the North Peoria Gateway. That was completed last year in 2024. That tells us, what can go there, what are the development standards, what are the infrastructure requirements and infrastructure needs. And so in a minute, I'll show you that plan as an aside and the level of interest that we've seen from the development community. The Peoria Innovation Core, I'll talk about that in a few slides later. That is a entitlement program that is going on right now. We're not ready to a point where we can put out a master plan document for public review. We will be there soon, and as you'll see, there's a whole host of public meetings and like we would with any large development case, a public process that'll unfold as part of that. But first, I want to talk about the regional context. I understand that the graphic is probably very difficult to see from the back. I'll try to describe it here. So what you're looking at is a graphic that shows to the left, Northwest Peoria in yellow, and then to the right side, you're looking at the city of Phoenix. And so what I'm trying to do is show the position of the North Peoria Gateway Peoria Innovation Core. So what you see a bunch of circles too, right? And so if we just focus on the left-hand side where it says 30,000. So if you look at the master plan communities that have all been entitled for decades, Vistancia, Saddleback, and you look at their maximum unit count that they're legally entitled to have, that's 30,000, right? When you think about the number of units that we've issued permits for to date in that area, we've issued about a third of them, meaning in its life cycle, they've still got a fair amount of distance to go before we see build out. Likely that's going to take decades, right? These things don't happen overnight. Vistancia was entitled back in the mid 90s. Here we are 30 years later, and they're at 60% build out. So these things don't happen overnight. They take decades to happen. When you look to the right over here, in the blue in the city of Phoenix, that square you see there is the TSMC, right? The massive development on State Route 74, or the Loop 303. Well, there's an entitlement around that called Halo Vista. And so there is a exclusion for residential around the TSMC, but they have an entitlement for up to nearly 9,000 units along I-17, right? They haven't started any of those units yet, but they have a legal right to have those. When you look south of the 303 in Phoenix, there's an area called North Park. It's about 6,500 acres, okay? They're working on an entitlement right now with the State Land Department and the City of Phoenix. And right now they're proposing nearly 20,000 residential units as part of that plan. That's a big area, but that's what they're planning. Again, these are going to take decades to build out, right? And then working your way down to the bottom in north central Peoria around Rock Springs, West Wing, Alora Vita. These areas have been entitled for many years, probably 2 decades, okay? When you add all those up together, there's an entitlement for about 11,500 units. And they're further along, they're closer to the development line, and so they've developed about 70% of the life cycle. So all this to demonstrate, when you look at these two areas, and when Mike and I went and talked to the State Land Department, and we said, you know what? There's a lot of residential entitlement out there. When you look at Northwest Peoria, when you look at what's going on in Phoenix, there's a lot of residential development. We need jobs, we need businesses, we need something to serve those people. We need something to catalyze growth and develop those jobs for those people to work at. And you know what? They agreed with us. And they told us that Peoria Innovation Core was very well positioned, right? It's along the 303 at Lake Pleasant Parkway, around the 74. It's very well positioned to have a centerpiece for employment, hospitality, and commercial growth, along with a lot of other things. And that's one of the things I'll talk about. This is a large area we're talking about here. And also with the North Peoria Gateway along the 303, also another important area. And for us, it was also equally important that these areas develop in the city, right? Nothing against the county, but we do have more robust standards than they have in the county. We want to make sure they develop according to our standards, our architectural review, our infrastructure requirements. And so it was really important that these areas develop within the city. So I just want to take a really brief aside. I did mention the North Peoria Gateway. We first accomplished that sorry about that. We first accomplished that back in 2024. And that was really where we established that relationship with the State Land Department. And I think we demonstrated that we could collaborate with them. We could come up with a good plan, and we were a reliable partner. I think that was all demonstrated there. And so through that effort, we were able to not only annex the southern portion of the North Peoria Gateway, but also provide for a master plan for that entire area. And we brought it forward to council in October of last year, and that was approved. And what this plan provided for was a flexible mix of uses, right? With with transitionary land uses where they're adjacent to residential. And as you move in along Vistancia or Loop 303, that's where you want to focus and concentrate the intensity. And that's what that plan generates, or identifies rather. And so again, that was important to have a cohesive master plan. These efforts have certainly paid off, folks. We're getting significant interest. In fact, there are 4 applications that have been turned into the State Land Department now for all the lands west of the 303. So we're talking about 1,000 acres here. So if we look at the screen here, you'll see DU1, DU2. Well, DU means development unit, right? It's just a sub area. There's an application in DU1 from a national home builder for extension of single-family development adjacent to Trilogy. Makes sense, right? You have a transitionary area there. As you move into the middle, there's another application in for DU2, and we haven't seen a development plan, but the land use calls for a mix of land uses there, right? Commercial and so forth, hospitality, residential. And then DU5, that is the area centered around the 303 and Happy Valley. That was a very high priority area for the city because it occupies very advantageous space, right? It's right at that key intersection. And so there is an application in for that too, what we call DU5 North, and it's for major retail, major commercial opportunities there. And with these come all of the requisite infrastructure improvements that are required, including the straightening out of the Happy Valley and the Vistancia intersection, right? Badly needed. We're doing interim improvements right now, but this will result in those permanent improvements. And then when you get south of Happy Valley there, there's an application in for continuation of some commercial, and then when you're adjacent to the power station and the power lines, right? We're looking at employment growth. I mean, last thing you want to do is put residential there. You're going to put employment growth to match its context. So let's move on to the Peoria Innovation Core. So we're talking about an area of 7,000 acres, and just to put that in perspective, that's about 10.5 square miles. That's the size of Vistancia. Vistancia is about 11 square miles, right? So we're talking about an area of the same size. And working from south to north, it is generally bounded by the very southern extent as where Pleasant Valley is, right? And West Wing. That's the southern extent of the PIC, of Peoria Innovation Core. It goes all the way north to about State Route 74. On the west side is the Agua Fria River generally. And on the east side is our city limits, right? It's the city of Phoenix. It's what they call Dead Man's Wash, which is why you see all those areas in green there. And so what we've done on this map is we've broken it up into 3 areas, 3 sub-areas, right? What we're calling Core 1, that's generally the area south of the 303. And Core 2 is the area that we won the auction yesterday, and that's the area between the 303 and the Cap Canal. And then north of the Cap Canal is what we're calling Core 3, right? All the way up to State Route 74. So collectively, we're talking about 7,000 acres. We are in the process of leading the entitlement effort with state land. So whereby with the North Peoria Gateway, they led, we were a partner. In this instance, we are leading the effort and they're a partner with us, right? And so right now we're working on all of the constraints analysis. We're reviewing technical reports. We're trying to understand the topography and the traffic considerations, infrastructure requirements, because all of this is going towards developing a master plan and a planned community district application that we can then initiate and take through the public process. So this is all the back work in support of that effort, right? And so when you look at the Peoria Innovation Core, one thing we've definitely discovered, there's a lot of constraints, there's a lot of considerations here. Think about it, there's overhead power lines, there's 2 canals, you have freeways, we have hillsides, we have cultural areas, we have all kinds of floodplains and flood channels, we have all kinds of things going on. And so what these areas do is they inform the planning, they inform the potential land use opportunities there, but they also create little smaller parcels that provide points of transition, points of departure for land use, right? So we're looking to create a cohesive vision and strategy. And so if I could talk about what are some of the early land use concepts that we're thinking about for the Peoria Innovation Core. Again, this is going to be refined. It's going to evolve through the public process. But if we talk at a high level, what are we talking about? Core 1, the area that is adjacent to Pleasant Valley and West Wing, makes a lot of sense for single family and moving north for a moderate density residential, right? It provides for good transition for from Pleasant Valley as you move north. Areas along Lake Pleasant Parkway and along the 303, you would expect to have employment. You would expect to have commercial, hospitality, those types of things. Because one of the things we're trying to do, you know, we were purposed with having bringing real economic development growth. What we want to do is avoid some of the missteps in the past, particularly along Loop 101, where you have a lot of single-family development along that corridor. We don't want to repeat that mistake, and so we want to make sure we have the right level of development, the right mix of land uses, and the right balance. So again, we're talking about a lot of land, a lot of things can go here. And then as you go north of the Cap Canal, that's where it gets a little fuzzier, right? Because you've got a lot of different things. We certainly see opportunities for residential, we see opportunities for employment, as you would expect when you get close to a power line corridor and a canal and you've got bad access and hard to get to areas, perhaps industrial business park, that kind of development. But that's all being reviewed right now. It's going to be taken through the public process and refined as we go along. But one thing I do want to say, and I have heard in some of the public meetings, is that there's a perception or a fear that this is going to be just one concrete jungle, and that is further from the truth. I couldn't be more strong about this statement, in that we've got some very strong ordinances in place today. Any development has to meet these ordinances. We have a desert lands ordinance, which requires that we protect our primary flood channels. It requires a buffer around it. It requires native plants to be protected. It requires we protect our most significant cultural sites. It requires standards for hillside development. There are standards for design review and all those things that are all taken into account as we look at applications that come in. I mean, my staff, we work way too hard and employing all these things, to impugn them. So we're really very bullish about the Peoria Innovation Corps as it moves forward. Let's talk a little bit about the schedule, and I promise
Chris, if I could just make one point real quick. Can you jump back a slide?
Yep.
One thing I want to note, because I too am super sensitive about the comment around concrete jungle. Core 1 already has a second application. So there's an application in for 800 acres for a national home builder. And that's a fantastic step because they're going to play off of our IGA. We're already doing a power extension. We're already going to put sewer lines in. It's going to allow that residential to come faster, which is fantastic. And it's going to secure that land. So looking on your map, everything from the southern boundary, probably 3/4 of the way up to in Core 1, that center section is already got an application in for single-family residential. So for folks that are apprehensive, thinking it's going to be, industrial factories right there, absolutely not. It's going to be single-family residential, a super clean transition out of Pleasant Valley. There's plans for commercial retail along LPP, along the 303, with the heavier employment centers on the opposite side of the north of 303.
Thank you for that, Mike. And then my last slide, I promise I'll quit talking and we'll go to the next speaker. This just at a glance shows the schedule for the Peoria Innovation Corps. As I mentioned, we're in the process of, sorry about that. We're in the process of doing the data collection due diligence. Early this fall, we're looking to have those technical reports completed so that we can then have an application in place that we can initiate and then start that formal review of the PCD, or the Planned Community District. Stakeholder engagement, it will be ongoing because we've got a lot of stakeholders in and around the area. We're planning to, most definitely we'll want to meet with Councilmember Bullock to talk about what the communication strategy will be and what community meetings we should have and where we should have them, because we're going to have lots of community meetings as we go forward and refine and consider all the variables for the Peoria Innovation Corps. And then, like any rezone effort, they eventually do lead their way to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They're a citizen group that's entrusted with rendering a recommendation. They also, work very hard, and they consider all the different variables. But they will render a recommendation, and then the PCD zoning will then go to the council for final action. And we expect that to happen sometime in first quarter of 2026. I should say it will happen. That's
That's not a maybe.
That's right. It's going to happen. So with that, Mayor and Council, I'm going to turn it over to Kate Powers on my left.
Thank you, Chris. Can you hear me okay? Does it work? I can't hear myself. So, thank you, Chris, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Chris and Mike have done a really good job of explaining why we're so interested in developing the Peoria Innovation Corps and all the attributes of that land. But to put all those opportunities together, it was going to take a very creative and innovative effort. And the first part of that was joining up with the Arizona State Land and partnering with those folks. And we entered into a IGA, or intergovernmental agreement, with them in December of 2024. Written into that agreement is our intention to start the development in the middle of the overall 7,000 acre parcel in what we call Core 2. It's been mentioned several times in here. Already it's between Loop 303 and the Cap Canal, kind of east and west of Lake Pleasant Parkway. And there's already work going on up there already. So if anybody drives up past the Loop 303, you'll see stuff going on out to the west. And why Core 2? The reason why is because it's so strategically placed, right? It has direct access to Loop 303. It's far enough away from existing development to allow transition to our proposed uses. It's close to power and gas, and within reach of our own water, sewer, and reclaimed water systems. Some of those things that Chris calls, I guess, problems as far as being able to develop everywhere you want, some of those things are actually assets, like having good power already there and having high-pressure gas already there. The types of economic centers we want to develop need those kinds of things. The agreement with ASLD, state land, contains a list of infrastructure projects required to serve the area. And these projects are well thought out. We've known about them for a while, and they're actually in the existing city capital improvement program, so they're part of our current budgets. We will proactively install these projects to increase attractiveness of the land and provide developers with more schedule certainty for their projects. The agreement with state land also contains mechanisms for Peoria to be reimbursed for infrastructure projects. And the mayor and Mike spoke about this earlier, but this happens in a couple different ways. The first way is that you go out and without buying a piece of property, we would go install infrastructure in the area. And then the idea is state land would sell off a piece of land that the infrastructure benefits, and then it's written into the IGA agreement that as part of that contract with a land buyer, that they would reimburse us for the costs of the infrastructure that contributes to that parcel. The second way we get paid back is just like any land developer anywhere. It's similar to Saddleback or Vistancy or anyone else. You go buy a piece of land from ASLD, you build all the infrastructure, all of that work raises the value of the property. You realize that value by selling the land to a buyer. And that's what we're proposing to do for Peoria Innovation Core 2. That is the strategy. That's why we bought the 834 acres. After completion of the agreement with state land, Peoria design and construction teams went to work. Projects required to serve Core 2, including the services for AmCore, are mostly designed, and some of them are already under construction. This includes well sites, improvements to Ashler Hills Road, which is the main east-west road off of LPP. And there's other projects under as well, things for construction water and whatnot. The AmCore facility is also nearly ready to start. A permit that will allow site grading has been reviewed already, and we expect it to be issued to allow construction to begin the first part of next week. Approximately 28 pieces of earthwork equipment, this is dozers, scrapers, and water trucks, will make their way to the site, and mass grading will start September 2nd, Tuesday of next week. We have been very busy, and we are moving very quickly to meet the goals of this community. And now I'd like to pass it over to Kevin. Oh. Thank you.
All right, I have the privilege of recapping yesterday's auction, so we'll keep this short and sweet and move right through. As you know, state land brought to auction based on an application the city of Peoria submitted for what is now identified as Core 2 within our greater Peoria Innovation Core. Ended up being 834 acres once you added in the undevelopable land into the process. And it came out at an appraised value of $46.7 million. That is an appraisal that is done by an independent appraiser that has nothing to do with the city, is completely through the state and the state's independent actions to get that. So the minimum bid was $46,700,000. Peoria bid that amount, and there were no other bidders. So for 10% down, we were able to acquire the certificate of purchase. Anytime we want to then patent the rest of it, we have to come back with that 90% plus any interest on that to bring that into action. Mr. Darwin, with his unbridled power, signed the participation agreement because it was an administrative action that needed to be done to implement the agreement. And we have started our moving forward. That participation agreement will actually set up so that if we sell any parcel in here, after we recover all of the infrastructure costs and other soft costs associated with it, we actually split the balance 50-50 with the state and us. And then the last bullet, it's actually the second to last bullet, but one of my favorites, is that with this auction, we will now receive a refund of $15 million for the rights of way that were purchased earlier, so we could get going on this process and get this going as soon as possible. So with that, I'll turn it back.
Let's, that made Kevin happy, but let's just not lose that. For every roadway project we ever do, we would spend the 15 million and never get it back. I think that we can't miss these little things, right? $15 million for buying the dirt underneath a road is a big thing, and the city's been doing it for every project we've ever worked on. In fact, when we presented this idea to the team, they looked at me like I had two heads. And they kept saying, you mean we're getting the money back? We don't have to budget for it? We said, well, we got to pay it up front, but we'll get it back. So within 2 or 3 weeks, we'll get that cash back. That goes to show that the IGA is doing what it's designed to do, right? We get reimbursed for those expenses.
Can you explain that one more time? Because I think
So when we build a road,
just pause for one.
Yep.
No city that I literally just had dinner with 12 mayors last night. No city, and I'm telling everybody in this room, I literally had this conversation. Nobody can understand how we did this. So if the mayors of other cities can't understand it, I really want you to kind of try to take a minute just to emphasize so citizens can understand how significant this is.
So a lot of times when we do projects, the biggest and most challenging thing is acquisition of the right-of-way. So if you're watching us build 67th Avenue right now, we have to buy little strips of land from all those homeowners in front of their houses, right? It's a very cumbersome process, and we pay them. We pay them market value, or we pay them some reduced cost if it's undevelopable land, right? We'll pay them for that rights-of-way. So when we expanded Lake Pleasant Parkway, 15 years ago or so, right? We went into state land, we did a right-of-way application, and they sold us right-of-way. It would normally cost, in this particular application, $4.50 per square foot. When you build roads, it is measured in dozens of acres. Dozens. I think in this case, it's like 84. You would normally pay $4.50 a square foot. Because they were attached to the auction, you ended up buying it at $1.29 a square foot in the auction. We got our $15 million back, right? They were conveyed within the auction, demonstrating the concepts within the IGA work as designed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, after keeping our head down, after the council we did as the council had directed, you folks continued to stay focused, and we stayed quiet about the deal. We ended up with no competition at the auction. It was very encouraging to walk in and pay $46.7 million instead of what could have happened and getting bid up. We did exceptional well. $1.29. Let me just put this in comparison because I heard this number today. We paid $1.29 a square foot for this property. The property downtown Peoria, we just priced them all because we got people interested in doing private development, priced at $21 a square foot. We paid $1.29. And because we paid $1.29, we're able to move Amcor to the PIC. And I really do appreciate the citizen who came in. She had one ask. So she had a great ask the last time she came in. She said, when you wake up, I want you to open your window and take a look out. And how would you like to look at that thing, right? She was very honest and transparent with her answer. She had one ask, and I appreciate that she was here tonight to share that, because the staff have worked tirelessly to pull this off. Like, again, I cannot describe to you the number of hours and the pain that went into pulling this off. That's why nobody's ever pulled this off. It is easier not to do it than it was to do it. It would have been easier to build this thing where they originally set to build it. But instead, we put our head down and went and figured it out. So what we did is we did a land exchange agreement. We're going to go through this later because item 2R on your agenda is going to require you to vote on this. But what we're proposing is a land exchange agreement. And I'll walk through the dollar values associated with it, right? 56 acres in Vistancia, right? Which appraised unimproved at $8.63 a square foot. We're trading that for 104 acres at $1.29 a foot. Okay, and I'll get into more of that in a minute. So we're going to change them. That's what gets them from A to B. That means you are landowners in Vistancia now. If you vote yes, I'm sorry, I get ahead of you. If you vote yes and we close escrow, you will be a landowner in Vistancia. The second thing you'll see tonight is a development agreement that codifies the location change. It drives home our public infrastructure commitments, and I'll get to what those are. It's not $100 million of public infrastructure for them. I'll get into the very specifics. It does make some adjustments to the water and wastewater. We'll be very transparent on what that looks like. Okay? The third thing, so I think it's 4R on your agenda, is a license agreement. That license agreement allows Amcor onto the property while we're in escrow, because we have to go through a process to get the deed. It's called the partial patent application. We'll get the patent. Then once we hit all the closing costs, closing document requirements, we'll close escrow. But as Cape had said, and I don't want it to get lost, they're going to start construction on Tuesday. Because, Councilmember, just like you had heard when you went there, schedule was everything. So we have worked everything ahead of time so they can break ground on Tuesday, because if you remember in the original DA, the ground break date was 9/30/2025. And we committed to them to do everything we could to help them hold schedule, because that was their biggest concern with moving. So we partnered with a great partner. Amcor has been absolutely fantastic in this partnership. So we're going to go through this in more detail. I'm glad folks came out to hear the whole thing, and I'm glad they're sticking around to hear the whole thing. I've got one slide I want to touch on, and then Maria's going to share a little bit about what we plan for some of the 5 North area. So, I guess I shouldn't skip over this one. So this is a picture. This is the actual rendering. They have been working full blast to design this building. So they did. One of the things that we talked about with Amcor, they work dual teams. So I don't want this lost. In order for Amcor to keep moving, they brought on and we worked on this site in parallel to the other one. And so they are ready to go. They've still got to pull permits. But this is a rendering of the building, what it will look like on the 104 acres. This is one of 2, right? It's similar in size to what was proposed in terms of the square footage, so it's not growing any more in square footage than what was on the site plan. They got the community riled up. So this building, it doesn't look that much different than what was there. It's just been relocated to this location, okay? So before I pass it to Maria, I want to add just a couple things. So 5 North of Vistancia. I want to, again, thank the Vistancia development team and Land Resources. They have been excellent partners. And for that, what we wanted to do in the DA amendment you're going to see tonight, we'll walk through it in a little bit, items 5R, is going to flip the relationship a little bit. So the relationship was always targeted end user, right? We just agreed to work a targeted end user, and when we identified that targeted end user, right, then they would convey up to 50 acres of land to that end user, and we did that with Amcor. Well, now that we did, we still want to respect that relationship because the density and the employment is important to activate the retail. So in the DA amendment, you'll see we are continuing to honor that targeted end user language, and we want to continue to recruit people who fit that profile to go in that parcel D15 and D16. And we're going to touch on, 25 acres or so tonight. We'll talk about 25 acres. The goal is to recruit employment and amenities that the community seeks. We need to increase density to support the retail. So I want to address one thing because we've heard this countless times. We were promised retail and we're not going to get it. That's what we've heard multiple times. That is a false statement, and it has always been a false statement. You can see on the map that's here, the Main Street concept on the north end of the property is still there. You see where Amcor was going, the blue in the middle, it's still there. So even the Amcor property, Project Landing, it never displaced the retail. It never did. In fact, when we told the developer we were going to move them to the PIC, they got nervous about the retail because they were banking on that density and those employees to help good rotations at the retail and the restaurants. They need density, they need employment in order to pull it off. So with Amcor leaving, they got nervous. We gave them our new plan. They feel good. They're still committed, right? They still want to do it, but these deals are complicated. They take time to put together. So the developer still has the desire to move forward with the retail. They haven't abandoned it, right? But I think it is important to note that the first piece is right along Lone Mountain. There's a fitness user going in and some adjacent retailers. That stuff is moving forward, so we're starting now to see these projects move. It'd be premature for me to say what is their announcement to make, but we know that there's a fitness user and some adjacent retail that will be going in on Lone Mountain. That's the first piece to move in the puzzle, but we hope that the projects Maria is going to talk about now continues to drive some density there in order to be able to help light up that retail.
Thank you so much, Mike, and good evening, Mayor and City Council. Before I get into the conversations that we've been having, I just want to confirm to you that staff fully understands how much a medical campus means to our community. I mean, to be clear, for the last 20 years, healthcare has been a targeted industry that economic development has been pursuing, and we have had as you all know, some success with that. You know, we've opened Honor Health just this year, Valor-Wise downtown a few years ago. You know, we've had some success with that. One of the issues that healthcare has, though, is they rely, and I know you've heard this numerous times tonight, they rely on data, market, and density. So they need density to say, yes, we're going to put that big investment into a certain community. Now, the Northwest Valley, Northwest Peoria specifically, is a gap. There's a huge gap for healthcare. And the good news, I believe, is that all of the healthcare providers are aware of that. So when we started talking to them, you know, intently, as we did back in May, when we realized what the city's PIC acquisition strategy was going to be and how it was going to be implemented, we talked to all of them numerous times, presentations, meetings, visiting them where they are, market research, you name it, a lot of analytics. And we kept hearing the same thing, you know, well, I'm just not sure, it's not proven up, you don't have the density. You know, they looked at the regional context map that Chris Hawkins provided, and, you know, they said the same thing that he was saying, like it's taken 20 years to build out what we have, it's gonna take 20 more years. So I'm really excited to tell you tonight that out of all the conversations, we did have one who had made it to the finish line, and that's Honor Health. As of yesterday, we have a signed letter of intent with Honor Health in which they have agreed. We don't have a development agreement yet, but the letter of intent demonstrates that they have agreed that they will purchase 8 acres outright, and they want an additional 8 acres next door. The usages for those that acreage will be primary, urgent, and concierge care. They want to build an outpatient surgery center, post-acute services. They want to include integrative medicine, occupational health, physical therapy, and wellness on those 16 acres. They also want to work with us to issue an RFP on additional land that we haven't really figured out exactly what that is yet, but that is what the way Honor Health works in the community. They bring physicians and their developers with whom they team up with, and they build together something. And then we're looking at something that would be along the lines of the Honor Health project in Skunk Creek. So you have a lot of different users in there, in addition to all of the current uses that I already mentioned. They also have said that a hospital is still on the table, but it has to be data-driven. I mean, that is a market highly, you know, the data required to do that is very intense. And they will work with us on that. That will be the last phase, like phase 4. So for that purpose, we are identifying 10 acres that would work for them. Right there you have 26 acres just for the medical uses that have already been outlined. In addition to that, we have received a proposal from WestMec. Interestingly enough, we received a revised LOI within a month of February's council meeting, in which this council approved the project at 95th Avenue and Peoria Avenue to build their WestMec campus there. They are clamoring for a campus in Vistancia. So now that we have this LOI with Honor Health, we're going back to WestMec. We're looking at between 5 to 7 acres for them to create medical programs for healthcare career fields, and partnering both with ALA, which is across the street, and with Honor Health. We're very excited about this opportunity. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a question?
Not really a question, but I'm so sorry. There may be people in the audience that aren't familiar with what WestMec is. Would you mind maybe just giving a 60-second explanation of what that is for them?
Sure thing.
Thank you.
WestMec is the West Valley's Career and Technical Education Center. They do training working with all of the high schools throughout the West Valley. And the final thing that we're looking at that we don't have enough about yet, but both WestMec and Honor Health have demonstrated an interest to help us recruit a university partner for medical and healthcare careers as well.
So that was the longest intro to any presentation I've ever delivered in my career. And so with that, I just want to see, it was, I mean.
You were there.
Yeah. It's better than the impact fees presentation. So before we move on, because we're going to roll into some votes, and again, we wanted to do this clearly because we didn't want to roll into the votes without giving the whole pathway. And I know it was a long story to tell, but this is, I hope you know, for the staff that are in the back of the room, this is a big thing to share all this. It is very important to us to be able to articulate to the community, to share what we've delivered on your vision. We believe this is the vision that you have cast for the community. We believe this rings that bell. We're very proud of what we delivered. So with that, Mayor, Council, we're happy to take any questions. Before we jump into questions, I'll just highlight the rest of the evening. We do have 3 more kind of subpart presentations. We're going to deep dive into the AmCorp. 1 presentation, 3 votes. Vistancia, 1 brief presentation, 3 votes. Then 1 project Core 2 development deal, 1 vote. We're out. So with that, Mayor, Council, we're happy to take any questions.
Anything?
Oh, sorry. Can I ask a question?
You can ask a question.
I don't know what button to
Councilwoman
push.
Bullock.
We were never trained what button to push for a
It's
question.
okay. Keep
There's
going.
9.
One time.
Thank you. So it's important you've been talking about this evening, how important it is to let everybody know, because obviously I put out lots of email newsletters and Facebook posts and community meetings and whatnot. And of course, nobody, not everybody hears it. And that's, people are busy. I get that. But I think you've talked about how important it is for staff and how crucial they were to making this happen. As a council member who's relatively new, 7 months in right now, I want to let you know I appreciate that there wasn't anything withheld from me. It wasn't anything slammed in my face for the last second. This is actually the 4th time I've been through this, Mike, 2, and I did myself. I did read everything myself as well, went through it. I asked questions. Kevin and his nice bow tie received several emails from me. Sean, our CFO, received. Chris Hawkes received. All the emails to try and get down bullet point by bullet point to make sure that I understood it correctly so I could do 2 things. Communicate to my constituents as this develops, because it is a developing story, and more importantly, cast my votes logically, factually, and sleep well at night. And thank you to your team for literally dealing with my barrage of emails, Zoom calls, and meeting in your offices, because I wanted to feel comfortable. So your staff's been great to you. You all have been great to me. I feel comfortable now. Now, do I know 100% of it? I'm not going to lie. There's still stuff to learn. There's still negotiations. There's still things to do. But thank you for making me feel comfortable and not coming up here and going, oh my gosh, I hope I vote the right way. I'm ready. Thank you.
Brilliant. Any other questions?
No other questions?
All right. Thanks, guys. So I promise we're moving at a good pace. We should get out of here a little quicker, and I do appreciate the council indulging us and letting us tell that story. It was a little longer than we had intended, but we've got about 1 slide for each item. We've been through this, so if you got questions. So what we're going to do, I'll go items 2, 3, 4, take any questions. You'll go vote 2, 3, 4, but I believe you're going to do an intro. I'm sorry, I'm jumping.
No, keep going, Mike.
All right.
Keep us rolling.
I'm on a roll tonight, man. All right, so again, we've shown the building, we've shown the deal. We're going to break into items 2, 3, and 4. Item 2 is an exchange agreement. Item 3 is a third amendment to the development agreement. Item 4 is a license agreement. So really basic, the exchange agreement is pretty simple. It's a long doc, but it's got a couple of very specific things in it. Number 1, it does what it says. It exchanges AmCorp's position on 56 acres for 104 acres in the PIC. I put the appraised values up there, right? Because I've already heard somebody say, like, 56 acres is less than 104. The difference being is you have one that's in a developed community, appraised at $21 million. That is unimproved. We will have to improve it. So fully improved, it was like $28 million. We'll talk about that when we get to the Vistancia slides. So their land had a higher value than ours. The Core 2 property is worth about $6 million. So that was the biggest piece of the land exchange agreement. The second part, we've agreed to a couple of things. Number 1, we agreed to not sell property inside of Core 2 to any of AmCorp's competitors. And that is defined within the exchange agreement what that means. okay? So we've agreed not to sell to any advanced packaging semiconductor facilities that compete with Amcor. Number two, the zoning that exists there, the reason we could pull this off is because there's zoning, and UPCO zoning. It already has a residential prohibition. We've agreed to maintain that residential prohibition for a quarter mile, okay? Third, it offers Amcor the right of first refusal on an additional 55 acres west of the 104 at fair market value, which includes all the public infrastructure associated with it, right? So the first deal, the land exchange, I'll get into the public infrastructure component that goes along with that land exchange when I talk about the DA. But specific to the land exchange, we swap two pieces of property. They get first right of refusal on 55 acres. We agree no competitors. We agree no residential. We maintain the zoning that exists for the no residential. Okay, so that's item 2R. Item 3R. So I'm going to check my notes here. So item 3R is the DA amendment, amendment number 3. It repurposes as much language as possible from the first agreement. The reason we did that is because we know the first agreement had been tested by the AG. My favorite letter we received during this whole thing was, I respectfully request an investigation into the conscious malfeasance of the mayor, the city manager, and the deputy city manager on the land deal with Amcor. The AG reviewed it, upheld our decision, and deemed that that deal was lawful. There was no gift clause, so we repurposed as much language as humanly possible from the old deal to the new deal. Plus, it makes your job easier when you review it. 2, we did make some adjustments to the reclaimed water. So it is true, there is more water allocation to Amcor in this deal. You'll notice that the language is now drafted around net gallons per day, 373,000 net gallons per day maximum usage in phase 1. That has sewer return values and everything that goes along with it, and then 686,000 net gallons per day total across 2 phases. Should they build 2 phases? They're only obligated per the DA to build the first phase. The second phase would be an expansion and a benefit to the city, but there's no obligation to do so. I didn't put a bullet here, but I will say it out loud. There is a fixed reclaimed water rate. So it is important to know of all the semiconductor facilities, so Intel, TSMC, Amcor is the only one that is required to use reclaimed water. Everybody else gets to use potable water. So that means the water that's treated that comes out of the wastewater treatment plants, which in the summer or in the winter months, sometimes we just put down the washes because we don't have a place to put it. In the summer, it goes to golf courses. Amcor will use that, and it came at a significant expense to them to invest in the technology to take the solids out of that water. And as such, we agreed to a fixed rate for the duration of the DA, which is a 10-year period. The $1.94 per 1,000 foot is the current rate today. You'll also notice that there's a sewer rate adjustment of 30%. The water they're going to give back to us is cleaner than what we give to them. And so because the chemical usage is reduced, we deemed it to be appropriate. And it is also fixed for the duration of the DA. Amcor did increase their investment commitment to the city. So if you remember on the first deal, it was $350 million on the first building, $350 million on the second. This case, it's $1 billion all in from the very jump. The penalties remain. So when people say, what happens if Amcor doesn't build? They cut us a $15 million check. There are penalties and protections for the city. So when we have the right to buy it back at fair market value, we did so intelligently because we know if they didn't build, they'd have to cut us a $15 million check. On the penalty side, we'd get the land back, we'd sell it again and pull the infrastructure off on the second sale. We backstopped it effectively. There is one provision that didn't exist in the first one, really around the amount of public infrastructure we have to build. I'll touch more on that in a second. But late delivery of infrastructure does allow Amcor to step in. So if we are late on delivering on our projects and they have to step in order to be able to make sure they can open their building, we have to deliver this contractually by December 31st of 2027. We are set to deliver it currently by the spring of 2027. So we're about 6 to 7 months ahead of that schedule already. We feel comfortable we'll maintain it. And I'll just highlight again, the city is to construct all public infrastructure, but as we said, we're backstopped with the IGA and we're backstopped with the next provision I'm going to walk you through. So inside of the DA, I think it's specifically section 3.6 and some other components that go with it. It walks through this process. And so ultimately what it says is the land values are swapped and reconciled for this true up. So we said they have a benefit. They gave us $21 million of property. They gave us 6. It's a delta of 15. That offset, when we sell the property in Vistancia, will go to pay for portions of the public infrastructure. I heard somebody hypothesize that there's $104 million of public infrastructure applied. That is not a true statement. There is $52 million of infrastructure applied to this project. So when we go down the line, our goal is to recover the $52 million. So we're going to get 15 back when we sell the land we traded out. Maria already walked you through how we're selling about half of it. Then we're going to go provide this infrastructure. As the bullets walk you through and the section tells you, we've done a couple of things here. We have committed, or if you vote yes, we will be committing to take the construction sales tax, so any sales tax derived from the construction of that building. We estimate this at about $8 or $9 million. We've agreed to invest that into the public infrastructure. So whatever, because of the project, it was benefited because they built, we're going to take that $8 or $9 million that we're estimating, and we're going to use that to buy down on the public infrastructure. But the second reason we're doing that is there's a state statute that we're going to leverage. There's a state statute, 42-5032-.02. It's in the bottom right corner of the slide. And what this does is it's for projects greater than $500 million, Amcor's $1 billion, 500 million is less than $1 billion, then it affords the ability for the state to give their portion of the construction sales tax to offset the cost of public infrastructure. Right? So R9, we're estimating that the state could generate as much as 26 million, but there was risk. And so in our negotiations, Amcor has agreed, it's in the bottom line of the sheet. So we're going to go a year after we build. So it says 12 months after TCO, that means temporary certificate of occupancy. So 12 months after they build, they plan to be done in December 31st of 2027. So by December 31st of 2028, we will do this financial reconciliation. And we will give them a set of certified financials for the local TPT. TPT means transaction privilege tax. So the construction tax is generated and the state reimbursement dollars, we will add those together, right? We'll take the $52 million, we'll subtract the land, we'll subtract impact fee reimbursements to about $3 million. We've got another line item for $3 million of employee-related taxes, and the last line sums it up. So when somebody say, well, how do we get our money back? Amcor has an obligation in the contract. That $31 million that's left on the bottom line, if we don't make it back in local taxes and state reimbursement, they cut us a check for the delta. So hypothetically, if we got 0 taxes locally and 0 from the state, they'd have to cut a $31 million check to cover the delta of the construction tax. Now, the goal here is for us to generate $8 or $9 million and apply it, and to pull down about $22 to $23 million from the state. That gets us to the $31 million, and it's a fantastic break-even proposition. Worst case scenario, the city is protected, and we're backstopped with Amcor having an obligation to write a check up to $31 million. So I think we've done a fantastic job of negotiating this. I think it's put us in a very good position. We're backstopped by the IGA on the broader infrastructure. We're backstopped on the $52 million of infrastructure. The only thing that has to hold true is that we sell the land for at least $8.63 inside of Vistancia, which is slightly below the market value. There's no reason to believe conceivably that we would lose that. Okay? So that's item 3R. Item 4R is the last item that we'll vote in this first group. This is a licensing agreement. So what the licensing agreement does is it allows us to bridge the gap while the land exchange is working out. So just like when you buy a house and you're in escrow for a while and it takes 30 to 45 days to get through that process, it's going to take the exact same thing here. So we're going to sign, based on how you vote, if you vote yes, then we will move these documents into escrow. A lot of things have to happen to complete the escrow. It's all explained inside of the exchange agreement. But Amcor is ready to get started now. If we haven't heard us before, we're planning to break ground on Tuesday. I say we, they. They're planning on moving forward if the council says yes. They're planning to go forward. They are planning to start construction on Tuesday. Now, it is important to note the land exchange, this license agreement, does not absolve them of the requirement to get permits. They still got to go through state and local permitting processes and draw a permit. They do. We have done the reviews. We are provisioned. We are ready to issue, based on your decisions, we are ready to issue a mass grading permit so they can start construction. We will, in the ordinance, it does say that we can grant temporary construction easements because there is no public road. It's the middle of the desert. So there is a trail to get them there. We're going to grant them a temporary construction easement to get the equipment from LPP to the location. And should something go fundamentally wrong and the land exchange doesn't close and the deal blows up, there's a requirement inside of the license agreement that they have to restore the land back to the condition in which they got it. So you could then prep it and sell it to the next person. So all efforts have been moved to get this schedule rolling. It was one of the trademarks that we had, which was to help them hold schedule. I think we've done it. This is a good, legal, defensible way to get there. We should be okay. They still have to pull the permits. So we feel all of that is dialed in and we feel good about where we are. So Mayor, with that, the staff is going to recommend for all of these that you guys accept them and vote in favor. I'm willing to take any questions, and if you don't have any, you will have to take 3 separate votes, item 2R, item 3R, item 4R. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think we're ready to vote. Council, do I have a motion to approve agenda item 2R?
Mayor, I propose we approve agenda item 2R as stated.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Please vote. And it passes 7-0. Thank you. Council, do I have a motion to approve agenda item 3R?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please vote. And it passes 7-0. Council, do I have a motion to approve agenda item 4R?
Motion to approve 4R.
Do I have a second? I just have a second. Please vote. And it passes 7-0. Thank you. I now recognize City Manager Henry Darwin to introduce one of the presentations of items 5, 6, and 7R.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's of no surprise of anyone in this room that Mike Faust will be giving a presentation on items 5, 6, and 7R. Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Darwin. I did tell you today was going to be a selfish day, and I appreciate the opportunity to do it. Again, only a couple of slides. We've been through this multiple times. Item 5R is pretty straightforward. It was a joint development agreement, 3-way agreement between Amcor, Vistancia, and the city, right? And it addressed how we were going to construct the roads around it. If you recall, the city had full street. We agreed as part of the economic development package, we would build a full street improvement on Peak View, which was the northwest corner. We agreed to build Westward Skies to the south. No longer needed because this deal's done. So an affirmative vote on this one would just simply terminate the DA. That's no longer necessary. Perfect. Okay. Item 6R, amendment number 4 to the Vistancia Development Agreement. This really does I'll say 3 things. Number 1, it solidifies our commitment, the city's commitment, back to Vistancia to maintain the targeted end user strategy, right? That we're going to sell the property for that employment component, right? Same language, we just repurposed it from the earth, so it's just a role reversal because now we're the landowner instead of Vistancia. So that's item 1. Item 2, now they were worried about leaving a donut hole in the middle of their neighborhood. So we've agreed that if we do not develop at least 35 acres, so if there's more than 21 acres undeveloped or not sold by September of 2030, and that date is important because 2030 was their original buyback provision under the 50-acre dedication clause, right, then Vistancia has repurchase rights, but at the then day fair market value, right? So we would get the appreciation of that property over the next 5-year period should they exercise that option, right? And it's conceivable to believe that the land value would go up, right? So if they don't go, now they have a provision inside of that. They could come back and say, hey, we don't want to buy it from you. We want to go collaboratively. We'd like to take this to be more residential. We said we'd work with you on the zoning. It's still got to go through the zoning process. It's got to go to planning and zoning. It's got to come in front of the council to make a decision. But we said, hey, we would go along that road with you. The third thing that this development agreement does, after the termination of the JDA, it then puts back, because we're the property owner, it puts a requirement for half-street improvements on our side. And that's a pretty traditional commercial development thing. When you buy a piece of ground, you are typically responsible to develop the half-street, center line to your side of the property. So all this does is codify that requirement inside of the DA that we're going to split. So they're going to move forward in constructing the road. We're going to split the cost 50-50, right? They take their half, we take our half. And then item 7R addresses the budget component of that, because there was approximately $5 million in the CIP to address what was called Project Grandview half-street improvements. It's been in there since 2025 because that was the code name for Amcor's project, was Project Grandview. We never did talk about this code name. So we needed the delta, about $2.05 million to cover that cost, because the estimated cost for our share with some contingency is about $7 million. So with that, Mayor, staff are going to recommend the same thing. We're recommending that you adopt both item 5R, item 6R, item 7R, and with that, sir, I'm happy to take any questions.
Council, do I have a motion to approve agenda item 5R?
So moved.
Second.
Please vote. Passes 7-0. Thank you. Council, do I have a motion to approve agenda item 6R? Do I have a second?
Second.
Please vote. And it passes 7-0. Thank you. Council, do I have a motion to approve agenda item 7R?
Move to approve.
Second.
Please vote. With all these 7-0s, I wonder who's going to complain about that. I now recognize City Manager Henry Darwin to introduce 8R.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, you see that Kevin Burke has joined Mike at the table there to discuss the final item of the evening for your approval involving a budget transfer for the PIC Core 2 development.
Thank you, Manager Darwin, Mayor and Council. Back and cleanup, and no surprise, it's about money. So here we go. So to get this across the finish line, we've got a few things. First is the $8.5 million we talked about. In order to develop any parcel of the state land, you've got to pay the remaining 90% on that land and get the patent associated with it. And so the first item is actually we are patenting 144 acres. 104 is for Amcor. We have 25 associated with some additional roads, and then another 15 with some undevelopable land. That undevelopable land becomes a future baseline for some more projects in the area. So definitely getting that riparian river corridor baseline going. So that's the 8.5. Once we have the land, we put the road on top of it. That's 6.4 million. We've got some drainage to maximize how everything is laid out. That's 5.4 million. While APS is in the area, we've got to extend some lines to both Core 1 and Core 2. That's 6 million. And then the last project is 96th Avenue sewer main and the associated lift station. That was a project that was actually budgeted for FY26, 27, and 28. We're pushing that all forward since we have the majority of the expenses associated in year one, FY26, so that brings $7 million to the front. The main message I want to leave on this item, and actually there's three, is first is we've been planning on this for a while. It's at $33 million when you put it all together, $33 million, that's a big number. But this is something that we've been expecting, and it is neither unexpected nor harmful to the budget because we've been planning. The half-cent sales tax, which was dedicated by councils decades ago, was dedicated substantially for economic development, and we've been saving that money both intentionally and unintentionally for that big economic development project. The unintentionally is we've had a number of economic development projects that we budgeted for and didn't happen, and the money went back to the pot, and the pot grew. We are now ready for that day. It's here, and we have the finances in place to go. Second, and you may recall, 3 long months ago, we adopted a budget that had a larger than previous year contingency. That contingency was purposely for the idea that if this thing works, we're going to have some expenditures associated. So we planned ahead, set aside some dollars, and we are ready for that expense. And the third one, and it's the one up here on the slide, all these improvements are recoverable either through the AMCOR DA or the state land IGA. All these dollars are eligible to be recovered, and they'll be put back into a revolving fund associated with the PIC for moving forward.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yes, sir. All of these funds are recoverable through either our AMCOR development agreement or the state land IGA, so that as we sell land, as the state sells land, these costs are taken right off the top before any split and repaid to the city before we go forward. So this is a pretty amazing element. I mean, we've talked about, I think Mike said, you've heard of city-owned business parks. That's not unheard of. It's rare, but not unheard of. You've never heard of one where you get your money back for investing in this and you split anything over with the state so that they're making money on this too. So this is unheard of, but that's what you've done. And the finances are ready to take it on home.
I had one question, if you don't mind, just for clarity. So when you say that this is all recoverable, that includes everything that's listed on here, including the top 8.5 million? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I just want to be very clear about that. Thank you.
First of its kind. Council, do I have a motion to approve agenda item 8R?
Second.
Please vote. Actually, don't use your things. Call each person on this. Agnes, please.
Mayor Beck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Crawford,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn,
I vote yes.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes,
Yes.
Councilmember Dunn,
Yes.
Councilmember Bullock.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And it passes 7-0. The reason why I asked for that is because I think it's important that everybody understands it's not a button that we're pushing. Nobody's telling somebody else how to vote. Every single council member up here is educated on the topics. We do it every single time, and there's a reason why every single time when you see a 7-0 vote or a 6-1 vote or a 4-2 or a 4-3, it does not matter how somebody votes. They're voting with their vote. There's nobody up here that's dictating this. So the reason that this has been accomplished, and I will point this out, the staff has put in a tremendous amount of time, more than I know. And I've gotten calls on weekends, nights, evenings. The gentlemen that are sitting in front of you, the entire staff that stood up earlier, everybody has been working tirelessly on this. Ma'am, you made a comment about the Dottie, maybe I'm calling you that. You know, you'd made a comment. I appreciate you coming tonight and actually saying that. I remember when we talked briefly at the Trilogy event. I mean, those are important pieces. And it's not necessarily because of all of us. I mean, we've had to toe the line. The staff is who has done this work. So what I said earlier, I truly mean. This staff has been absolutely incredible. It is an absolute pleasure to not only work with them, but to see them actually execute this. This is just our vision. We're the ones that actually get to execute this on this side, but we're not the ones that are lifting the shovels. We're not the ones that are actually doing all the hard work, right? The staff that has put this in. And we have, I will tell you, I had mayors last night that I had dinner with, every West Valley mayor, and every single one of them, how did you guys do this? It's because our staff and the staff that we put together, we're just one side of it. They're the ones that executed this. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't say that enough. I know it's amazing. So with that, we're adjourned. No further business. Thank you.